All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this edition of a Copilot focused ShareGate webinar. Let me introduce myself. My name is Samuel. I'm a solutions architect here at ShareGate. Super excited for this one because this is our second edition of a Copilot focused webinar. And the last one that we did in the last quarter was by far our most attended webinar. Thousands of people were super excited, just like myself, about Copilot. And with the survey that we sent out, we actually noticed that about, I think it was 65 to 70% of attendees were just planning on deploying Copilot in the future. So that means there's still a lot of questions around how to do things right, and we're going to be able to dive into that today. So a little bit of things to get off of our plate first. You will be able to ask questions in the Q&A section on Teams. So you can chat in the chat if you want, but that will not be monitored for questions. So please make sure you use the right tab so that we can get to your questions by the end of the webinar. Now, let's dive right into it. I will not be the speaker today. I am your host, but we are joined by an incredible speaker, Microsoft MVP, who has had access to Copilot since the early days, back in August, before general availability, as part of the early access program. And I actually saw Copilot in action for the first time in Chicago live from this MVP. I will never forget that session. It was incredibly insightful. So you're in for a treat here. So without any further ado, let me pass it over to Andy. Andy, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Really excited to be here. Samuel, thanks for the great introduction. This is going to be, I think, a really fun session. I'm really excited to talk about how to master Microsoft 365 Copilot deployment. This is how to actually roll it out in the organization. For those that don't know me, my name is Andy Huneycutt. I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I am a senior technical specialist for enterprise collaboration tools in the Microsoft suite. I do user adoption training for a large healthcare organization that is now multi-state all across the nation. And I've been involved in our Copilot rollout since the very beginning. I'm an early adopter for generative AI and the current revolution that we're seeing with AI within the workplace. I jumped on board as soon as I could. I begged, borrowed, and pleaded to be part of our Copilot program, and I've helping to roll that out across the organization, but also to deliver sessions like this and workshops at conference events to help people understand how to use this in their day-to-day activities, but also how to make the most of it so that you can really take full advantage of the tool. Day-to-day user training and adoption is where I spend most of my time. I've been involved in the training and education industry for over 15 years, especially around the Microsoft stack. Since 2017, Microsoft has recognized me as an MVP, which means I get to go to Redmond every now and then and go behind the scenes and kind of see how all this comes together, provide some feedback, and get hands-on with things before it comes out. And then lastly, I'm actually co-host of 365 Deep Dive. You'll find that on YouTube, along with fellow MVP John Moore. We spend 2 hours each month, usually the third or fourth Friday, just deep diving into a topic in the Microsoft stack. We've been doing a lot of Copilot lately, so check us out there. So with that, the things that we're going to cover here today are things that I've actually lived since August of last year. The steps for actually going through and deploying Copilot within your organization. This isn't just turn it on and let it loose. There's some strategic things that you need to do to really maximize the potential of Copilot in your organization. We're going to go through a lot of tried and true and tested tactics that not only I've developed, but also with some other members of the EAP and some guidance from Microsoft and other organizations, really applying that to real world scenarios and helping you to understand how this could affect your organization and your business. And then I'll provide some tips and tricks and strategies along the way, some things that I've learned that can help you. So as Samuel mentioned, one of the most eye-popping things is, even though there are people involved in the early access program, like my organization, 68% of organizations are just now thinking about how they're going to leverage generative AI, Copilot, or other AI tools within the workplace. They're starting the planning now. That's probably why you're here. But what that means is over the next couple of years, we're going to see a tremendous shift in the enterprise industry. And there are going to be a lot of organizations onboarding. We're trying to provide you kind of a cheat sheet, if you will, some steps that you can take now to start preparing so that you can hit the ground running when your organization starts to work with this tool. So strategic rollout is going to be really the most important thing that you need to think about. We need to have a plan and a strategy in place so that when we roll it out, we can do it in a secure way. We can do it efficiently. We can do it in an organized manner, and that's going to help us to measure the ROI and to determine if we're really getting value out of this. And that's the big question outside of data privacy and security that I get. How do we measure the ROI on this? It's kind of an expensive license on top of what we're already paying. Is it worth it? So with that, let's talk about briefly a baseline of what Copilot is, and then we'll step through some of the deployment from there. So when we talk about Copilot, there's a lot of different Copilots coming from Microsoft. There's Copilot and Copilot Pro, which are geared for individuals outside of the enterprise or maybe in a small business scenario. And then for larger organizations and enterprises, you have Copilot with data protection, and then you have Copilot for Microsoft 365. These have similar capabilities, but the application is going to be vastly different. If you're in a corporate environment, you're going to want to look for Copilot for Microsoft 365. That way you have admin and oversight and reporting on top of that Copilot deployment. Versus if you're in like a smaller business, you might want to look at Copilot Pro to take advantage of generative AI in your environment. Anybody, though, can sign up for Copilot. That's just available, whether it's on your phone, laptop, portable device. Anybody can essentially sign up for Copilot and work with that free version, but there's going to be limitations there. And then within an organization, if you have Bing search enabled, you're going to get Copilot as an extension of that to be able to have conversational approach to searches and retrieving information. There are admin controls to turn that on or off, but with the organization versions of this, there is enterprise data protection that is in place. That just means that your data is never used to train the model. Your data never leaves your tenant. The only thing that goes to the large language model is actually the prompt, and then everything is actually grounded through the Microsoft Graph. So just kind of high level with that. So moving forward, when we think about Copilot, these are all the a variety of things that it can actually do. It's really good at getting you over the blank page, helping you to maybe think of a new idea, to maybe create a summary off of existing content, to brainstorm different ideas based off of scenarios. It does a really great job of that. But when we work with it, there's an in-app experience and then there's a cross-app experience. So what does that actually mean? So we'll say this is for the enterprise, Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm a licensed user. I have my E3 or my E5 account, and then I have my Copilot license on top of that. With that in-app experience, I could go to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook in the web or in the desktop. Same thing for Microsoft Teams, or I could go to OneNote in the web, and I would have a Copilot experience actually built in. Now that Copilot experience is going to be scoped down to that specific app. So for example, if I go into Excel, it's going to work with a table of data, and it's going to allow me to gather insights, analysis, work with conditional formatting, creating new visualizations and charts based off of the data in that workbook, but it's not going to extend beyond that workbook. If I go into Outlook, I'm going to be able to summarize an individual email thread, or I might be able to summarize across a couple of different threads. That's a recent feature here in May of 2024 that allows me to work within Outlook. But coming soon, you're going to be able to maybe extend a couple of these apps into the cross-app experience. The cross-app experience is actually kind of baked into Teams right now. You have the ability to work with Copilot either through chat or through the left nav rail. You can also go to copilot.microsoft.com in your web browser, and you can access the Copilot chat experience there. And the Copilot chat experience is like the virtual assistant. It allows you to have conversations like you would if I've used a previous or another AI tool like ChatGPT. It's a very similar experience, but the Copilot there allows you to work across files and people, content in Exchange, whether it's events in your calendar or messages. It'll connect to Teams chats and Teams conversations, and then all the files that you have in SharePoint, OneDrive, as well as Microsoft Teams. Some of that experience is rolling out now to Word and rolling out to Outlook, but it's not quite there for everyone yet. So that just gives you the ability to start a conversation, start a process with Copilot, and maybe extend it to other content that you already have in your organization. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Now, in previous webinars, Antonio Mayo did a really good job of putting together some tips to get prepared. Richard Harbridge has also done another version of that for ShareGate. Be sure to check out those webinars. They're on the ShareGate website. And I've done a blog post on how to get started with Copilot as a baseline to kind of give you some ideas and some capabilities. That's part of an ongoing series. So I do encourage you not only to check out the blog post, but other webinars in the series. So as we move into the pre-deployment planning, these are the things that we need to think about before we actually give licenses to people and get this out into the organization. So the first thing you're going to want to do is identify who your key stakeholders and the roles are going to be. You do need an executive sponsor or sponsors for this so that you can get top-down buy-in for this initiative in your organization. That's also going to help you to establish some governance and some guidelines that are going to be really important for using this moving forward. Additionally, you need to get your compliance, your security, your risk, your InfoSec teams involved early on, because there are going to be questions, and these are already popping up inside of the chat window around data privacy and security. There's going to be questions about the use of generative AI in the organization. There's going to be additional questions such as, does Copilot get trained on my data and my information? And getting these teams involved early means that we can establish the governance around that, and we can roll this out in a safe and secure way moving forward. From there, though, we're going to need to look at things like community managers. If you want a successful Copilot deployment, you need a community built around it for support, for training, for user adoption, and for guidance. Additionally, we're going to need to look at departments and service lines. As we start to roll this out, we're going to take a phased-based approach to it. There's going to be some teams that are a little bit more technical that we can roll this out to early on and get a lot of valuable information from them, a lot of lessons learned that we can use to roll this out to other departments that are maybe not as technical moving forward. But those departments and service line representatives understand their business. They understand their business processes. They understand how things come together, how people and processes and tools come together. And that's going to give us insight into where we can implement Copilot and get the most value. Also, as part of this program, champions are going to basically bring themselves to the forefront. Champions are going to be the enthusiasts. They're going to be the ones that ask the tough questions. They're going to be the ones that share success cases. They're going to be the ones that want to use it for everything. And we want to embrace our champions because they help us to spread the knowledge of Copilot and to get buy-in from other teammates. And then we have our end users. These are the people that are actually going to be using it for day-to-day business processes. These are the people that are going to use it for work throughout their the day-to-day activities. Their feedback is going to be really valuable, and we need to make sure that we're actually engaging them. So identifying all of these stakeholders is going to help us to start to look at an onboarding scenario. When we onboard, and all credit due to my co-host at 365 Deep Dive, John Moore, for putting this part of the onboarding together, is you think about this in terms of crew. The crew are the project managers, the architects, the leads that are involved in the testing, the planning, the piloting, and the deployment of this. So that would be someone in my position within my organization, working with leadership, working with some teams from the InfoSec team, working with some of the corporate compliance office for this. From there, we're going to identify different boarding groups. These are groups of people that we want to onboard, and we want to have different experiences for them. So we have first class. First class are going to be some of our early adopters. That's going to be a very small pilot group that we're going to want to work with. The early adopters are also going to be some of our power users and eventually maybe some of our champions. They might already be using generative AI for other processes in their daily life. They might even be using it for some work-based scenarios. With that first group, we're going to start to identify some best practices. What worked for them? What are some scenarios that they're able to take advantage of this in? And that's going to help us to start building some of our champions. From there, we're going to look at some of our business class and onboarding them into the program. You want to pick 2 or 3 departments initially. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But from those 2 or 3 departments, we're going to need to get some people that represent those departments. A couple of the power users in those departments, the real champions, the day-to-day teammates that we lean on to get things done, to ask questions, to kind of guide. Those are the people that we want to get involved in the business class. We're going to give them some white glove service. They are business class. They are the ones that understand how things work. We want to make sure we give them the support that they need and provide a white glove for that along the way. We want to try to avoid edge cases. Edge cases are going to pop up. There's going to be a unique situation. Absolutely need a Copilot for this. It's going to change the way that we work, but it's only going to apply to that one team. We want to try to identify things that are going to help us to scale a little bit later on. And then from there, we have coach. And this is where we start bringing in different groups of end users. We start onboarding those end users. So these are the people that work in those business units. They work underneath those department representatives. We're going to automate as much of their onboarding as we can because we can't white glove everyone that's in that. Now, as we're looking at this, keep in mind there's going to be some additional kind of business class, first class scenarios that you need to keep in mind. Things like leadership. You're definitely going to want to have white glove service for them. Also, administrative assistants that are working with leadership in the C-suite, we definitely want to pay careful attention to them and provide them the resources they need to be successful. Now, with that, keep in mind the different participants. One of the things that my organization initially did when we rolled this out was we had a whole lot of leadership represented. Thankfully, Microsoft stepped in and said, no, we need to break this up and we need to get some more business leaders involved here. We need to get some more managers, department heads, and supervisors involved in this process. From there, we started onboarding groups of users in phases, and that's where our business users, our data owners, and then our information workers started to come into play. Now, some key departments that you might want to pay attention to early on, human resources, they're going to leverage this in a lot of really unique ways, and you're going to see a lot of big gains there. And human resource departments, especially in a large enterprise, tend to be rather large. There's a lot of savings and ROI that we can get, return on that Copilot investment in that department. IT. Whether they're doing code or whether they're doing documentation or documenting processes, Copilot can be a huge help for IT. Security and compliance. Using Copilot there is going to help streamline a lot of that, especially communications and pushing content out to keep our organization safe. And then finance and accounting are also another big unit that I would pay attention to early on. Using Copilot for data analysis can really streamline a lot of their workflow. Now, I included this in the presentation, and I just want to point it out. When Microsoft did their Copilot deployment, they started with marketing, then they went into sales, customer service, human resources, and finance. And what they found, kind of rolling it out in that manner, is that business teams were spending a lot of times in meetings. Copilot helped to streamline that. Business teams spend a lot of time communicating with email. Copilot helped return a lot of that time to the workday. Copilot helped to minimize a lot of the repetitive tasks, and Copilot started to make search much more efficient and much more timely. Studies show we spend about 28 minutes searching for a single item within the context of our workday, whether that's on our network drives, whether it's on our desktop, our local computer, or if it's in a cloud service like SharePoint, OneDrive, or Microsoft Teams. So returning time back from search was a huge time saver, especially in Microsoft's deployment. Now, As you're moving through this user enablement process, these are some of the key pillars that you're going to hit, or key points all along the way. So when you onboard, you want to have a very structured way to onboard people. You want to make it repeatable. You want to onboard in groups. That way you can give the information to a group all at one time. You can set expectations to the group, and then you can work through that group as a unit each and every time you move this through. Do not just assign a whole bunch of Copilot license and say good luck. We want to provide support along the way. So a structured way to do that is when people are accepted into the Copilot program, whether they are volunteered for the program or whether they volunteer for the program, we want to present them with onboarding notifications. Welcome to the program. Here's the Center of Excellence for Copilot. Here's some information that you're going to find helpful. If you have any kind of agreements that the users need to sign, this is a great place to go ahead and start that process. That way they can read the terms, conditions, and the policies associated with that. From there, you're going to want to start assigning the license. Now, I put this in a block for Power Automate. Automating this is going to streamline a lot of the work that you have to do down the line. So if you automate the license approval or the license provisioning process, you automate adding them to the Copilot community, which we'll talk more about in a moment, and then you automate the communication of that information, you're going to streamline a lot of this along the way. From there, you're going to want to provide resources for users that need to be trained and upskilled into Copilot. There's a nuance to talking to Copilot. If you don't know what's on the menu, how do you know what to order? We want to provide that information and resources for people to get started quickly. Short videos, longer training sessions, and more. And then from there, you're going to want to do your full user onboarding and enablement program. We're going to repeat this a whole bunch of times because you're going to be doing this in batches. And we definitely want to do this in batches as a group. That way, people that are onboarding to the program have other people that can take this journey, this flight along with them, other people they can lean onto for resources and support. So let's talk a little bit about some of our deployment strategies. So some key elements that you need to keep in mind as you're doing this. So we've established some of the stakeholders in the process. We've got an idea of how we're going to handle first class, business class, and coach. We've got an idea of some of the business units that we want to represent, and then a couple of the pillars that we want to hit along the way. But we're not done yet. For a successful Copilot deployment, you do need a community strategy. A community is a place for all of our Copilot participants to come together and share information. Essentially, we're going to create a Copilot silo, one stop for everything Copilot related, whether that's questions about use case, questions about how-tos, but also working with like technical issues, as well as sharing success stories. The community blueprint is going to include an objective. Why are we as an organization rolling out Copilot? Why are we as a business unit implementing Copilot as part of our day-to-day business activities? Identify the stakeholders and roles that you're going to have at this stage. You're also going to provide a communication plan, and the communication plan is also going to be a feedback loop. You're going to use this to publish out news announcements and updates. You're going to gather information from your users, and if you put that into one place, it's going to make your life a lot easier. I strongly recommend that you do not depend strictly on email for all of this, this feedback loop and communication. If you're emailing one-to-one or even one-to-many, you're creating silos in mailboxes, and that information is not easily shared with other people that are participating in the program, especially as you phase this out across different business units. So anything that you may have talked about with one business unit might be siloed in email unless you're publishing that to an actual community. And the end game really is to establish a center of excellence. Now, Microsoft has a Microsoft team as a center of excellence. It's already available and it's out there. However, you can use that as kind of a guideline to actually building your own. And we'll talk about some of the building your own scenarios in just a moment. So the communication plan. Communicating as part of the onboarding process is going to be critical. Welcome to the Copilot program. Here's the terms and conditions. You've now been licensed. Here's our Copilot community. For questions and answers, this is where you need to go. And we want to beat that like a drum because we want people to understand where they go for that information and try to get them out of that email silo. It also helps us to establish where they're going to find help. So the way that I have built it is around Microsoft Teams. That's the place for technical support, questions and answers, as well as our success stories. You're going to have ongoing communication, regular, consistent, ongoing communication. We want to keep people involved in the program. We want to keep the feedback coming. We want to keep sharing what's new. And something that you need to think about when you are onboarding into Copilot, when you're deploying this in your organization, you are basically flying through the air in the plane that Microsoft has built, and the plane is still kind of being built while we're in the air. There's new features and updates coming all the time. For example, here at the end of May, we just had Microsoft Build. There were a ton of new announcements for things that are coming to Copilot later this year. As those things come out, we want to make sure that we're telling users about that and how they can leverage it and sharing success stories around that. So part of our communication plan is news announcements and updates, keeping people up to date with what's new, what's changed, and what's coming. And that's not only for what's coming from the Microsoft side, but that's how we figured out use cases and scenarios for us to use this. So establishing a community is going to be key. You can't just set it and forget it. You need to establish a community. You need to nurture that community. You need to be consistent in engaging with that community and drive everyone to that one community. So the importance of a strong community is that it gives us one place to share information, ideas, news, announcements, and updates. We can share success stories, and I recommend that you definitely have an emphasis on success stories in your community. This is going to help new users to onboard. You can identify frequently asked questions, and you can address those ahead of time in your onboarding communications. You can also establish a culture where people go to the community and search first, and then they ask and engage in questions, and that's going to help you to scale and deploy this across your organization. And it's also, by establishing community, it's going to help you to share those success stories, and sharing is caring, and that's going to help other users to think about use cases that might apply to them and scenarios that they might not have thought of, and then you're going to see more engagement with Copilot from there. It's also going to help you to identify your early adopters, and those early adopters can help you to kind of streamline this and shorten the takeoff window when other teams and business units onboard later on. But the community is where you start the what's next for Copilot and generate excitement and provide a place for people to teach and to test and to learn. If you put the engagement into your community, you're going to see a lot of fruit come from that labor later on. So the community blueprint, a couple of things that you need to think about. Who's going to own the community? In my organization, I'm one of the ones that owns the community because I lead the user adoption and training programs there. But it's not just me. There's a team that actually helps with this. I've got teammates that work with the reporting piece. I get teammates that work with the InfoSec and admin part of all of this. I have product managers and leadership that have a say in everything. But the community is one of the things that I'm primarily responsible for, in the communications, the news, the announcements, the updates, and the content that's there. So you have to ask yourself as you're rolling this out, do you want to use an existing community, maybe one that you already have for another purpose, or do you want to build a new community that's strictly for Copilot? And from there, you have to determine how you want to engage with your user base for that community. You've got a couple of options in the Microsoft world, such as Viva, Engage, or Teams, and there's pros and cons to each that we'll talk about in another slide in just a moment. You also want to talk about the scope. How big do you want your community to be? How long is the life cycle of that community? Is there an end date in mind when we kind of set everybody free, or are we going to keep it going? And then you also have to determine, is it just going to be Copilot for Microsoft 365, or should the community be for other generative AI within your organization? You're also going to establish the objectives. Why did we create the community? And you need to sell it to your audience. You need to get them to tune into WIIFM. What's in it for me? By getting them to tune into WIIFM, you can help to establish buy-in and why it's important for them to be engaged in the community regularly. You also have to determine, should the community only be for Copilot licensed users, or should it be for the general population? In my organization, we scaled it down to just our Copilot licensed users because we didn't want to tease other people and get inundated with questions about when they could join the Copilot program. And then you have to establish through your early adopter program what kind of content is going to resonate with those users. Video, short video, long video, workshops, job aids, day in the life documentation, training programs. What's going to work there? It's probably going to be a mixture, but you'll start to identify that as part of your community, what's resonating, and you can lean on that. So when you're defining those objectives, keep in mind the style of communication. We want to be consistent in the communication. So one of the things, for example, that you need to be aware of is how are you going to communicate many to one for support? You got a whole lot of people coming to a very small group of people for support. Also, for pushing information out, how are you going to broadcast that out from that small group of people to everyone that's there? And then how do you want the masses to engage with one another? Our goal is to drive user adoption, to maximize the ROI, that return on investment for Copilot, to develop solutions where Copilot can help us as an event, as a business to maybe get more done or increase market share or streamline our workflow and our time to market. And we want to try to reduce the reliance on other tech, so we kind of keep people in like the same bucket. Those are just a couple of example scenarios that you might want to think about. So establishing a community, I kind of foreshadowed this a moment ago. Do you use Microsoft Teams or do you use Viva Engage? And there's some hard limits that are kind of help with that. But with Microsoft Teams, you're going to be limited to like 25,000 people within a team. If your deployment or your onboarding program is much lower than that, Teams might be a good place for your community because you can use channels, and each channel can be for a specific Copilot experience. You might have a getting started channel, you might have a resources channel, you might have a training channel, and then you might have a channel for each of the different Copilot experiences. Here's Copilot for Word, and there's a dedicated channel for that. Here's Copilot for Outlook, and there's a dedicated channel for that. And that kind of helps you to break up those conversations and organize them a little bit better. It also gives you a place to kind of point people to go and find specific kind of information. Hey, I'm new to the program. I have some questions about Excel and Copilot. That's great. We have a whole channel set up for you. You can go and find all your resources in one spot. And because it's inside of Teams, we can reach users no matter where they're working. We can also host our Copilot meetings and check-ins there. And it kind of gives us one central hub for everything. On the other side of that, though, you can use Viva Engage. Viva Engage can allow you to go way beyond 25,000 teammates, depending on how big your organization is. And Viva Engage is going to allow you to have discussions, questions, sharing rich media, and conversations. But it's not going to be as organized. You might need to use tags in your conversations to kind of organize things. So you're going to have a lot of information maybe in one community unless you create different Viva Engage communities. With Viva Engage, though, you can set it up so that you don't have to have a membership. People can freely join that community. I might do a Viva Engage down the line as my organization matures. And then you can mark things like questions and best answers, and everybody can see that kind of all in one place. But there's a limit to Viva Engage. And one of the limits my organization faces is we are multi-tenant. And because we have multi-tenant, we can't use Viva Engage currently with our licensing in order to have cross-tenant membership. So we've actually created a couple of Microsoft Teams across those tenants, and that's our workspace. Eventually, we might consolidate down into a single one. So there's pros and cons to each kind of community that you create, but the important thing is that you create it, and that becomes that center of excellence, that one place for everything Copilot related, and we drive all of our users there for questions, for answers, for technical support, for sharing, for resources. And we try to minimize the one-to-one communications, and we push everybody to the community for that content. So think about some of the resources that you might have in place today for onboarding. that you might have for job aids for your standard operating processes, that you might have for how-to documents on content. And then think about how some of it might be Word document based or PDF based, might have PowerPoint presentations, you might have day in the life scenarios, you might have video based training, short and long form. Think about all the different resources that you have. You're going to have a lot of those same resources when it comes to Copilot. The resources are going to be the how-to guides, the how to get started. We need to provide this information to our user base so that they have the things they need to be successful. Some of that information you're going to deliver in short little bursts, less than 15 minutes. Other parts of that information you're going to do 15, 30, 45, 60-minute scenarios. And some of that might be longer form content. The best part about all of this, though, is that you don't have to start from scratch. The Copilot for Microsoft 365 Adoption Center, that's put together by Microsoft, maintained by Caruana Gatimu at Microsoft and her team. They've done an amazing job of giving you a Copilot Success Kit to get started. These will meet the needs of many organizations, and then you can custom and tailor that for your organization and your business processes. There's all kinds of content there, from day in the life scenarios to how this would fit for like an executive versus how this might fit for a business user. There are communication templates that you're going to find there. There's training for each of the Copilot experiences. And then Microsoft at learn.microsoft.com has a number of different Copilot specific trainings that you as an organization can custom tailor into a learning path, share that with your users, and then you can check their progress. That's a relatively new feature that I'm just discovering, and I'm really excited to kind of roll that out for some of our teammates. But that material from Microsoft Learn are different modules that are self-paced. Users can stop and save their progress, and then they can finish out modules at any time. And they kind of get like a certificate of completion when they complete a module, and that kind of gamifies the process, and it's really, really cool. One of the things, though, that I really like doing as a community resource is providing Copilot check-ins. These are regular 60-minute meetings we do every 2 to 3 weeks, and it gives me a chance to share what's new, provide some news and updates, and then to do some how-to scenarios, share some success stories, and also to gather some feedback from our users. So that's one that I lean on pretty heavily. I also really like the tip of the week. This is a different prompt or a different Copilot how-to on saving time based off of a certain process. And this has been really fun to learn because it challenges me to develop my prompt engineering, but also other teammates are starting to contribute to that. And it gives them a way to sharpen their skills and share these prompts that can really help other people. So your communication and collaboration is going to be key. However you choose to do that, I do recommend you take a look at SharePoint News. We supplement our communities at my organization with a learning site. It's based on a SharePoint site template. And by creating SharePoint News, I can create a really dynamic news article, text, rich media, images, video, provide presentations and documents all in one place. But SharePoint News also has an email component to it, so I can email that out to the larger communities after the fact and drive everyone to that one center of information. So for example, we'll deliver a Copilot check-in, and later in that day, after the check-in's over, I'll create a news article with all the materials that I delivered during the presentation, the recording, as well as the additional resources. And it's all on one SharePoint News article. And then when I email that out to everybody, it has the nice looking feel from that template. Hats off to the team at Microsoft for developing SharePoint News and the email templates. That's a game changer for communication. So I recommend you take a look at that. All right, so let's just talk briefly about some adoption strategies and things that you need to keep in mind. We want to encourage active participation. That's why we want to be consistent, scheduling our check-ins, scheduling our news announcements and updates, and nurturing that community and providing that place for feedback. There's some additional things that you can do, such as Ask Me Anythings. Workshops are a great way to kind of scale it down to a small group of like-minded people, help them work through some business processes. You're going to have some white glove workshops that you do for certain business units as well. Sharing your success stories or interviewing somebody and sharing that as part of a check-in is huge. It helps other people to see how other teammates are using that in the organization, and they can get some lessons learned out of that. Focus groups for gathering feedback are also going to be core. And then polls and surveys. And I can't emphasize that enough. Regular polls and surveys can not only gather use cases and scenarios from your users, but it can also get them thinking about use cases and scenarios that they might not have been aware of. And by polling them on that, it kind of serves as a call to action for them to go and maybe review that a little bit later. And then when you really want to kind of push your users, prompt challenges. What's your favorite prompt? How good a prompter are you? How good are you at talking to Copilot? Those prompt challenges can be really fun and an extension of your hackathons. Make sure that you are providing training and support systems. This is ever evolving. It's been the name Copilot's changed a couple of times since this was released in the beginning of 2023. So this plane is in the air. They are still building out the wings and the infrastructure on it as we're flying. So make sure you have a training and support system in place around that. It needs to be continuous, and you need to keep that consistent throughout your process. And make sure you're providing a path for people that want to upskill and get to that next level. Part of this also means having support systems in place. That's what the Copilot community is for. But keep in mind, people are going to face some technical challenges. You need to have your help desk and some proficient people to be able to troubleshoot. For example, why is Copilot not showing up in my Office desktop apps today? It was there on Friday, but it's not here today. You need to have some people that are proficient around that. We are going to use the support systems, though, to continue to keep that community informed. That's a big theme of this presentation, if you haven't noticed. And then keeping your champions. Not only are your champions sharing, but your champions can also help other users to troubleshoot and help you scale your resources. And then keep the support questions. You're going to pull FAQs and learn to address questions and answers before they even pop up as you start to roll this out for different units. All right. Enlist your champions. I've mentioned champions a lot. Champions are really important. They're your early adopters. They're the ones that are already using generative AI. Maybe they've used ChatGPT in another life. Maybe they use Copilot Pro in their personal life. Maybe they begged completed in order to be part of the Copilot program. So we want to find those champions. They're going to be influencers in the business. They're highly engaged. They want to learn. They want to use this. And those champions are going to help us to roll that out within their team or their department. They're already power users. They probably already have a reputation in their department of being somebody who's proficient with the stuff. So we want to help them. They're going to help us to amplify our message. They're going to be the ones that give us detailed feedback and use cases, and they're going to help us to scale this across the organization. They might help to answer questions within certain business units and teams, and they're going to help to keep things positive within your community. And rest assured, there are going to be some situations, there are many highs, and there's going to be a couple of lows with your adoption process. You can help them by creating a champions community that's just for them. They get the inside scoop. They get special access to maybe some resources or things that are coming down the line, and you're going to use them for train the trainer scenarios. So I just mentioned the adoption journey. This is actually based off of some research that Microsoft did with Gartner. This is the Gartner Hype user adoption journey. And when you take a look at this in the very beginning, people are really excited. I have this thing. It can summarize all my emails and auto draft responses. It saves me so much time in Teams meetings. And then after a while, people are going to start to kind of, oh man, we're recapping the meeting again. Oh, this doesn't work in Outlook, kind of like I thought it would. I'm only able to summarize a single email thread. I haven't got the feature to summarize across email threads. Copilot kind of feels rushed, and that's some feedback that we've actually gotten from some of our end users. We call that the trough of disillusionment. What we want to do is get people back on that uptick. We want to get them back into the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. And how can we do that? By being consistent, providing that community, providing those success stories, building that champions network, showing the new things that you can do with this, providing an actual impact on the return investment for users. But most importantly, working with those users to get them to tune in to WIIFM, what's in it for me. this can return this amount of time to your workday per day. Not necessarily freeing you up to take on extra work, but streamlining some of the processes that you already have to make the most of your workday. All right, so last couple of things as we kind of get up to toward time, overcoming some of your challenges. There will be things like technical hurdles. There will be adoption barriers. Some of the technical hurdles are going to be around the technology, Windows 10, Windows 11, Mac OS, for instance. What Office channel update are you on? Do you have policies in place that prevent certain features inside of Copilot, for example, not being able to record Teams meetings or transcripts? Those are some of the technical hurdles that you need to think about. But also, what are your policies on desktop apps versus web apps versus mobile apps, working remote, working on the network? Those are things that InfoSec and leadership and your cybersecurity teams need to think about ahead of time and have a plan in place for. And then adoption barriers. Things change rapidly in this world, just in Microsoft 365 and the business world in general, but things change really rapidly in the generative AI world. Change fatigue is something to be aware of. All these changes, people's heads are going to spin. The community becomes the safe place for us to talk and kind of engage with one another and slow down and kind of take a breath. Fear of replacement. That is something that a lot of people are really anxious about. And the way that I look at it is Copilot's not going to replace you. It's called Copilot, not autopilot. A Copilot sits next to you, and that's what Copilot does. It extends your capabilities as a user, so it can return time back to you, maybe taking away some of the repetition and the mundane so that you can focus in on some of the core critical decision making. And then I do want to mention this, data privacy and security. I didn't touch base on this a whole lot in this presentation because that's not a 1-hour presentation. Data privacy and security is something that is built into your culture in the workplace. And it's not something that you're going to address overnight. Data privacy and security is going to start in the Microsoft cloud, but it's also going to extend to your network as well as your users. And when it comes to data privacy and security, one of the biggest concerns that I hear and I get asked questions about, and I've seen these questions in the chat already as we're delivering this presentation, is around oversharing. There are some tools that are actually built into the Microsoft stack that can help you to identify that. But in other situations, you might need to turn to a tool like ShareGate to identify some of the data privacy and security concerns that you might have. So I'm going to let Samuel speak a little bit about some of what you need to think about there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. And, throughout your presentation, if there's one resounding thing, it's making sure that we're enabling users and helping them be as productive as possible with Copilot. But there's also the reality of managing your content, managing your tenant, managing your workspaces. So with ShareGate, for those who have never used ShareGate before, we're an all-encompassing, out-of-the-box solution for helping you make the best of Microsoft 365. So if you have data that is sprawling all over the place in unused workspaces, like Teams and team sites, and you want to rein that in, merge these workspaces and archive what is not being used anymore, this is something that ShareGate can help you with. But also identifying who has access to what across the entirety of your tenant, so that when people use Copilot and say, hey, I want to know the salaries of the executives in this organization, they don't pick up files that have been shared using the everyone in the organization sharing. So we can help you find this internal sharing, the external sharing as well, if that is also a risk, and rein that in so that the deployment of Copilot is handled efficiently, both at the user level with the advice that Andy has given you, but also from purely a workspace and a data standpoint with ShareGate.
Thanks, Samuel. And just to emphasize, we get so many questions about data privacy and security. Anything you can do to kind of automate some of that, anything you can do to provide better reporting on that is just going to help your Copilot deployment program long term. And ShareGate, I've used it. It's been a really great tool in helping us, especially on the reporting piece, getting an idea of where that information is and helping us to kind of put that in perspective with what a user already has access to just generally through search or through content that's already available to them. Copilot doesn't give you access to content beyond what's already shared with you, but sometimes Copilot surfaces something that you didn't know was shared with you, and some users have cause for concern with that. And tools like ShareGate can definitely help to identify some of that and alleviate some of those concerns early on in the conversation. All right, so just kind of moving on, one other thing to keep in mind beyond data privacy and security is monitoring and continuous improvement. So monitoring and continuous improvement means me as the user adoption specialist, my organization, the admins and the group that are helping me to actually deploy this, we need to keep track of what's actually happening with Copilot. So there are many things that we can measure. Copilot usage by user and by app, not necessarily what they asked Copilot to do, but if they're engaging with Copilot in Word, Excel, PowerPoint. There's a Viva Insights dashboard that's relatively new that provides us detailed information around Copilot usage in our organization. We can surface that through some of our community insights as well. We do a lot of surveys to gather information from our users, as well as capturing FAQs. I keep a running list of that and use Copilot to help me to organize all of that so that I can establish baselines and adjust my training from there. And it helps me to keep a realistic approach to what's happening. So any tool that you can use, whether it's out of the box from Microsoft or supplementing it with like a tool from ShareGate, is really going to help you to get an idea of the usage, the interaction with it, and what we can do moving forward. So this is what one of the reporting tools looks like in the admin center for Copilot for Microsoft 365. You get an overview of all your users and a general summary of the different Copilot experiences that are being used, comparing with the number of total licensed users in the organization. But you can go down and drill into that on an app-by-app basis and just high level see the number of people that are accessing that Copilot experience on a daily basis. You might notice trends over time where it starts to uptick a little bit as people get more mature and more people on board. Then this is the Copilot dashboard that's part of Viva Insights that's currently rolling out from Microsoft. It's going to give you things like your Copilot adoption rate. It's going to give you your Copilot activation steps. You're going to be able to drill down into adoption, impact, but also suggestions for learning. And then you're going to see things like how is Copilot transforming your work, such as the number of meetings that maybe Copilot could have participated in, the number of chats that Copilot could have contributed to, for example. One of the things that I really like doing is user surveys. That's part of our Copilot check-ins and cadence. That's part of our Copilot communities. These surveys allow me to gather detailed information from our users, but also use this as kind of a call to action to get users on board, thinking about different Copilot processes, different Copilot use cases. And the surveys gives us detailed information from those users on their experience. There is some guesswork that's involved, but we provide some metrics for that. So keep in mind as you're doing this, feedback and continuous improvement is going to be key. Plan it, start to deploy it to a small group, monitor it, review, take the results, roll it back out to an additional group, start all over again. Be ready to change along the way and use that as you start to deploy it across a phased-based approach moving forward. So you're probably wondering, this is great, but is it really worth it? Is it really worth the investment, the time, the effort in order to do this? So I wanted to provide you with a couple of case studies and takeaways. All credit to my friend Sarah, splibrarian.com. Sarah's got a great blog. She's also got a great podcast, and she's a community speaker on the Microsoft circuit. Sarah's got a lot of really great information, but I learned how to measure business processes from Sarah long ago using the land of confusion. And she had a calculator in there where you take the time for a single iteration, the number of times that you're going to do that within a given time period, you estimate the hourly rate for the users involved with that, and that gives you an idea of what the process costs. If you run this before and after Copilot, you can estimate where you might be saving time with Copilot. So one example that we had in my organization was we had a process that took approximately 8 hours for a single iteration. This was done approximately 148 times over the course of a year. Maybe this would happen twice within a year. Looking at the average hourly rate, this process cost about $38,000 in man hours every single year. Copilot was introduced into this process, and it took a single iteration from 8 hours to 30 minutes. That's huge time back to those teammates to be able to focus in on other tasks throughout the day. So they were able to basically gain almost a full day of productivity back to focus in on more deep work versus this particular process. And that's just one example. We've seen across the board that 2/3 of our users are saving a minimum of 30 minutes every day. And some of those users are even saving over 2 hours per day by implementing Copilot as part of their processes. So be sure to take advantage of the Microsoft resources. There's the Microsoft adoption. I mentioned that earlier. There's some specific scenarios in there that can help you to kind of think about how you might deploy Copilot for different user bases in your organization as a starting point. And then from there, you can think about additional use cases as your communities mature. There's also day in the life. This just breaks down, if you're an HR manager, for example, how you might use Copilot throughout the day. Different ideas, recapping Teams chats early in the morning, drafting maybe a document with Word in the mid-morning, maybe summarizing email at the end of the day, getting ready for the next day, and so forth. This can be a where you can kind of plug Copilot in throughout your day. These are scenarios from Microsoft that are actually really helpful. I recommend you check out. And then lastly, as we kind of get to the end here, value realization. Microsoft Work Lab has done some really great research on this. And one of the things that they've seen that's been very, very consistent, if you spend 11 minutes per day, just 11 minutes, summarize an email, summarize a meeting meeting notes, and you do that consistently over 11 weeks, you're going to see an uptick in your productivity all along the way. And that uptick is going to start to be significant as you get across the that 11 weeks. So it really only takes 11 minutes per day to think about, let me use Copilot for this. And then you're going to start streamlining, and you're going to start seeing time returned to your teammates and your workforce that they can use for critical thinking and deep thinking activities. The Work Lab document is great. It's going to be linked in the PowerPoint. And then lastly, there is a top 10 of things that you should try with Copilot as you're getting started. This is a great resource for some entry-level prompts, some things to think about. But if you're a prompt engineer and you are a prompt guru, these are going to be pretty basic. However, it gives you an idea of the capabilities, but these are some things to start with as you start to mature and roll out your deployment. So I know there were a ton of questions in the chat. We wanted to definitely leave some time in the chat, the conversation here. I'm happy to stay on for a little while and do that. So questions throughout, we can fire away and take a few minutes with that.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna go ahead and go through the list here. And you mentioned earlier that having Copilot, using Copilot for about 11 minutes will pay for itself. But in the case of these questions, we're lucky enough to have an actual Copilot pilot here with us. So we'll ask you the questions instead of asking Copilot. So I have an interesting one here to start with. There's a lot of AI models that are out in the market now, Gemini, Claude, Copilot, Perplexity, and so on. And I think this may be causing a little bit of confusion as to what Microsoft is actually leveraging and what their partnership looks like. So I have two questions here. The first was, will GPT-4 Omni be implemented? So I think there's an opportunity here to clarify what that is as opposed to Copilot, and how is Copilot and ChatGPT related in context of Copilot Microsoft 365 in enterprise?
So I'll start with the first one. ChatGPT just released the 4.0, the Omni version, just a few weeks ago as part of their generative AI. Behind the scenes, OpenAI is a partner with Microsoft, and so Microsoft does leverage a lot of the models from OpenAI to build Copilot. Currently, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 runs on an optimized version of ChatGPT 4.0 Turbo. And I do believe that Microsoft mentioned at Build last week that they would be leveraging the new GPT 4.0 Omni model in the near future, but I don't recall seeing any specific release date or information on that. That being said, Microsoft did take that model and they did optimize it specifically for enterprise customers, and they're able to extend it using the Microsoft Graph, which connects you as a user through one of the Microsoft apps to the Copilot service. And what the graph does is it grounds your prompt in the information that you have access to. So it looks for things like the files in the Microsoft Cloud, OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. It looks for email, communications. It looks for people and conversations in the Microsoft Cloud, and it grounds that that prompt to that data. Kind of scopes it down a little bit, so it's going to get a more applicable response to what you're actually trying to do. It does that when you send the prompt to Copilot, and on the way back, it sends it through the graph one more time, and that just gives you optimal results based off the information you're working with. So that's kind of the first part of that. Can we circle back to the second question there, Samuel?
Sure. The second question was, how is Copilot and ChatGPT related in context of Copilot for Microsoft 365 in enterprise?
So ChatGPT is your chat bot connected to the large language model with all of OpenAI's learnings behind the scene, so that you can ask a question in natural language. You can ask it almost anything, and if it's training data, can find it, or if it can search the web or point to a document, it's going to return a response that would be like talking to a person. It's the smartest intern that you've ever worked with, but it's also kind of like a 6-year-old. If you don't give it specific guidance, the results are going to be very all over the place, and sometimes it even hallucinates. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is very similar. There is a chat-based experience, Copilot chat, or that you would access that copilot.microsoft.com, logged in with your enterprise credentials. There is a chat experience that's there. What's different, though, is that when you go into Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, you can use Copilot there, but it's kind of scoped down for that specific app. And in some cases, it will allow you to call and pull back additional information and have a conversation with that. But the experience is very much geared toward that app to get the most out of it. So with ChatGPT, it's a little bit more open. With Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's definitely grounded in your organization's information, but it's also got data privacy and security that your organization already has in place through its business agreement with Microsoft. So it's a little bit more secure, especially for an enterprise, specifically if you're already in the Microsoft stack, to maybe use Copilot, because you're going to get all the benefits of everything that you already have as part of your Microsoft agreement, versus with OpenAI, you might have to build some of that yourself.
Very clear. Thanks for that answer, Andy. We have a question here from Martin that asks, having 15,000 plus SharePoint sites with some percentage of oversharing or wrong content sharing, could this become a showstopper for implementing Copilot in an organization? So maybe if you can touch a little bit more on what that impact could be for an organization that is looking to deploy Copilot when it comes to extensive oversharing.
So the first thing I want to point out is that Copilot only has access to what you as an individual user has access to. Now, it might show you a document that you didn't know that you had access to, but it only gives you access to the information that you have access to. So it's not going to magically open up a whole bunch of content to you as a user. For years, we've had Microsoft Delve, and every now and then somebody goes into Delve and they see something, they're like, why do I have access to this? This is, kind of shocking. And they, call up the teams that support the Microsoft services and demand that they take that down. But that's actually based off of the way that search in the Microsoft world works. Search returns things that are recent and relevant to you, things that you as a user have permissions to. So an organization with 15,000 plus SharePoint sites, there might be some oversharing, and there is a possibility that Copilot could return something that you didn't know that you had access to. That being said, there are some controls that Microsoft customers can take advantage of. You've got Microsoft Purview for record retention, labeling, and sensitivity. You can also take advantage of, there's a newer feature where you can turn off certain SharePoint sites and document libraries from being accessible by Copilot. And then you can use other tools like ShareGate, for instance, to identify oversharing, and then you can start to clean up some of that oversharing along the way. The other thing that you can do is to educate your users on the proper way to share content and to provide permissions. And then you can monitor that with the administrative tools in your toolbox, and you can control some of that at a level that can allow you to scale this out. as we've rolled this out across a couple of different tenants, we haven't had too many concerns about oversharing, but we're also trying to be diligent in identifying some of that and address it early on. But keep in mind, this is not something that you're going to do in a day. I mentioned that earlier in the presentation. This is culture. You have to build that culture, and you have to be consistent with it. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, because Copilot does use your access as a user, the things that are explicitly shared with you and that you've accessed in order to start returning results.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Andy. And I think there's a good segue here to one of the questions that we have from Alaya, which is, what are the most common ShareGate reports for checking for oversharing? So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an ongoing process, and oversharing or challenges around sharing is not new, and it's something you should always be doing, throughout the growth of your tenant. And all that Copilot is doing is really bringing that to the surface and making that challenge more evident. So some of the common reports you may use with ShareGate, or the most common one actually, is the permissions matrix report that we call. And it's a very easy to run visual dynamic representation of permissions in a given target, whether that be a specific site, multiple sites, including their subsites, or the entirety of your tenant if you want. It's very easy to understand who has access to what, how they're being granted certain permissions, so that you can then use ShareGate to go ahead and take action on that sharing. We also have an internal sharing report that allows you to find specifically internal sharing as opposed to permissions. And while ShareGate has been doing automation around collaborating with the owners of workspaces to take action on external sharing, we are actively looking at building value to include internal sharing reviews as well. So that is not something that is out yet, but everyone and their aunt is all in on Copilot, so we want to be there as well. We're actively building that out, so you'll hear more from ShareGate on that front in the future. So we'll switch gears here. There's a few questions around GCC. We have Bud that asks, we train government organizations, and we're wondering if your team has any insight into what is needed by these various agencies to adopt Copilot and other AIs. There's rightfully a great degree of concern over security and reduction of errors.
So I'm in healthcare. I'm not exactly in GCC. I do know that Copilot for Microsoft 365 is available in GCC. But there's a private cloud over there. There's different rules and different governance in place, and depending on the level of that government body, there's going to be different levels of whether Copilot's going to be available or not. That being said, in those highly regulated environments, it's going to be even more critical to take advantage of things like Microsoft Purview and some of the additional security and compliance features that are there. But I do know Copilot is available for those. Copilot for Microsoft 365 is available for the GCC customers. There are probably some community experts. Antonio at one of our Pass the Mic speakers for ShareGate, he would probably have some really great insight into that. As I think he works a little bit more with government than I do.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Andy. I know we're already a little bit over time, so I want to reassure people that there's a ton of questions in Teams, and we're definitely not going to be have enough time to go through all these questions. So we're going to collaborate with Andy to get you answers to those top rated questions. And while this is not a question, I will end on this, Andy. Someone did post in the Q&A and has a lot of upvotes that this has been one of the most valuable workshops they've attended. They've been tasked with leading a Copilot POC, and this is exactly what they needed but hadn't found yet. So I think the praise is well deserved. Andy, pass it back over to you for one last word before we end the webinar.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me. I kind of want to just point out that if you happen to be able to attend a conference, you should definitely check out TechCon 365. I'm one of the speakers there. I do a Copilot workshop and breakout sessions, and ShareGate is actually one of the sponsors of that event. There's going to be 3 of those coming up this year, Seattle next week, DC in August, and then Dallas in November. I'm super looking forward to those. I think Samuel mentioned that he attended my workshop in Chicago last year. If you do attend, I got a promo code there. Save a couple bucks off of that, and then there's the link to that down below. But I do appreciate the feedback that this is helpful. You can engage with me through social media as well. So if you can't make it to one of the workshops, definitely engage on LinkedIn. I'm William. Feel free to engage and follow me over there. Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it this week. I'm at Andy Huneycutt. You'll find me on YouTube as well at Andy Huneycutt. And again, I'm the co-host of 365 Deep Dive on YouTube. Super easy, rolls right off the tongue. 365 Deep Dive, and that's a great place to engage as well and get some more Copilot information.
Thanks for that, Andy. And for those who are curious to give ShareGate a try, we do have a fully featured 15-day trial accessible on our website. Go ahead, give it a download, run that permissions matrix report, get an idea of what's going on in your tenant, and then book us a call and we'll have a chat about how we can help you. My name is Sam, Solutions Architect at ShareGate. Andy, thanks again so much, and we'll see you guys on the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.